We now come to the end of our presentations today with someone who is known and beloved to us, and we are honored to have him as a member of the USEA board, and that is the extremely famous, extremely articulate, way ahead of the curve, Dan Yergin, who is highly respected authority on energy, environment, politics, economics, the meaning of life, and on top of that, he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's the vice chairman of IHS Markit, leading information and advisory firm with 16,000 employees worldwide. And I think Dan, with the level of activity he has, is probably responsible for keeping 15,500 out of those 16,000 fully occupied at all times. He is the chairman of IHS Markit CERAWeek conference, which CNBC has called the Super Bowl of Energy. I thought it was our meeting today was a Super Bowl of energy. I'm crushed, Dan, but we'll get over it. Fortune magazine has called him one of the planet's foremost thinkers about energy and its implications.
Okay.
And he has a brand new book, which is an extraordinary book, The Map, Energy, Climate, and the Clash of Nations. And it's described by NPR as a masterclass on how the world works, and by the London Sunday Times as a wonderful book. USA Today has also piled on with their praise for this wonderful book, and we are delighted to say that it's already been translated into 10 languages. He is the author of the bestseller, The Quest, Energy Security and the Remaking of the Modern World, and the prize, The Epic Quest for Oil, Money, and Power, which was—
Sheila, we're going to run out of time, so let's—
Hey, I'm Irish. I can't help it, Dan. And
I'm struggling to live up to this, so, but you—
Thank you, Dan.
Okay,
take it away.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Honored to have you.
Well, and hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be part of this forum, and like everybody, of course, want to acknowledge Barry Worthington, who was such a great leader and friend of the industry, and much missed, but also great appreciation to you, Sheila, for your commitment and dedication and stepping in to make this continue to happen at USEA. And of course, want to thank Vicki Bailey, our executive chairman, who also has shown extraordinary dedication and commitment. I also want to add that yesterday at the board meeting, we heard from the great staff of USEA. It's really amazing all the things that it's accomplishing, they've been accomplishing in COVID time, both in the US and around the world, and really demonstrating how USEA links the United States to the rest of the world in terms of energy and energy access. So it's a privilege, as always, to be part of this forum and to be part of the USEA. I thought I would talk about how the US and energy and geopolitics are linked together. So much has changed in a little more than half a decade, and that's what I tried to pull together in a new map, provide a framework in a sense, because the terrain had changed so much. And you think about it, it's forces of technology, politics, economics. But I'm also so struck in writing a new map about the role of contingency. If a French captain in 1933 had not put a French flag on 9 virtually uninhabited islands in the South China Sea, 90 years later, this would not be a source of controversy and contention between the United States and China. If someone had not gone to a baseball game in Dallas in, I guess, in 1998, would the idea of shale just faded away? There would not have been a shale revolution. And if a electric car enthusiast who was trying to sell Elon Musk on actually an electric airplane, not going to lunch with Elon Musk at a fish restaurant in Los Angeles in 2003, would there have been a EV revolution? Would EV still be a subject for hobbyists? In fact, Musk said a few years ago, if it had not been for that lunch, there would have been probably no Tesla, basically. So when you think about these changes, it's the great forces and then individuals. But what I did in the new map was organize around a series of maps and metaphoric maps. And I think that's helpful to highlight key themes that are very relevant today. America's map is really around shale and the shale revolution. and really the far-reaching impact, much more than people recognize. Just think about our balance of payments. The United States was spending $400 billion to import oil in 2008. Now it's spending nothing. 2 years of $400 billion kind of sounds like a stimulus bill, actually. It's given us a lot of flexibility in terms of foreign policy in many different ways. And it's enhanced really the dimensions of influence that the US has. I found it in the book. I cite an episode where I found myself being shouted at a conference by none other than Vladimir Putin, who did not like the word shale because he saw shale as a great support to US foreign policy. Well, shale's now in a rebound after the collapse, consolidation in the industry, and a second revolution in terms of relationship with investors in terms of returning money. And growth will resume in shale, and it will remain one of the foundations of global oil supply. But if we end up the country severely restricting shale development, as some want, you got to call it what it really will be. It will be an import more oil policy, because the U.S. has 280 million cars, and we'll be back importing oil. We can see again and again that would change the position of the U.S. And we would worry again about energy security. I mentioned Putin, and that gets to the second map, which is Russia's map. And energy, along with other things, is very key to Vladimir Putin's assertion of Russia as a great power, with an economy that's actually smaller than Italy's and only somewhat larger than Spain's. And the issues between the U.S. and Russia will be on the table if that planned summit between President Biden and President Putin takes place on June 15th or 16th next month. There will be an inevitable discussion about the effectiveness of sanctions. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen has announced a sweeping review of sanctions policy, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. This has a big impact on energy, and whether it has less impact today because of the shifting balance in the world economy and the growing weight of China as an alternative, certainly with a major impact on US business. And it's central now, of course, in the battle over Nord Stream 2, the pipeline from Russia to Germany under the Baltic. That's $11 billion and about 3 weeks away from completion, except now under sanctions. And I found when I was writing the new map, this is part of a pattern. The US has been trying basically for 6 decades periodically to restrict Soviet and then Russian energy coming into Europe. Started with John Kennedy. In the 1980s, the Russians were building a natural gas pipeline that we wanted to stop. The Europeans did not. A compromise was made. It eventually went on. And I was struck by a comment George Shultz made at that time. He said, sanctions are a wasting asset. You have to say, what are their effect? What are the other tools? But from a geopolitical point of view, one of the most important things going on in the world is this new relationship, this deepening relationship between Russia and China, between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. In the new map, I noticed that at one of their meetings, Putin actually brought what he said was Xi Jinping's favorite flavor of Russian ice cream as a birthday present to him. There are many aspects to that relationship, but energy is a very important one. And Russia's pivot to China on an energy basis is partly in response to what's happening in Western Europe and the United States pressure on that. So something that we really need to think through. That gets us to China and China's map. China has the 5th largest oil industry in the world. People don't know that in terms of domestic production, but it's not enough. It imports 75% of its oil, and that's a strategic problem in the eyes of Beijing. And that's one of the main reasons for what they've done in terms of asserting sovereignty over the South China Sea, because they're concerned about the activities of the US Navy there, and also on their belt of road. And the South China Sea, it's well worth focusing on it because it is the most important waterway in the world. A third of world trade passes through it. The US and Chinese naval ships have several times come close to collisions there. There's a larger backdrop to this. You know, in a lot of ways, there's not continuity between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. One place there's continuity is on China policy. It's been reasserted, and it really is a change from what I call the WTO consensus, which was a notion that China would become part of this international order, to the language we hear today: strategic rival, great power competition. And it has echoes of the decade before the First World War. The sense of the collaboration is broken down. Look at COVID. The United States actually helped set up China's own CDC to help them manage diseases. But there's been no cooperation, and that just tells you on that crucial issue how the relationship has changed. I wrote my first book on the origins of the Soviet-American Cold War, actually. I never thought I'd be writing a second book on that, but I felt I was doing that in part as we see the trade war, the technology war. Energy is actually one of the few positives, along with climate, in the relationship, because China is an importer of oil and gas from the United States, and that's one of the elements in the balance of trade discussions. It's hard to think of it actually like a Soviet-American Cold War because the Soviet Union was not part of the world economy, and we are so integrated with China, and China is so integrated with us. China is one of the two largest holders of US Treasury debt. And in so many different ways, as we've discovered during COVID, how these supply chains work. But it is the #1 geopolitical problem facing the United States. Maps of Middle East. When I was writing the book, I happened to see on the internet a video of an ISIS operative stomping his feet up and down on the sand on the border between Iraq and Syria, saying, "We've erased Sykes-Picot." That was the map that was drawn up at the end of 1915 and 1916 to deal with the collapse of the Turkish Empire and as the basis of the state system in the Middle East today. And it's been under constant pressure and attack ever since then by ISIS, by Al-Qaeda, by Iran and the Revolutionary Guards. We'll see if there's a new nuclear agreement, if that relationship stabilizes or not. But oil is very much, of course, central to the Middle East. And what is evident today is some of the key oil countries are very focused on diversifying away from oil. But I think what they've discovered as price goes up and down, actually you need a lot of oil in order to diversify away from oil because you need those revenues. What the crisis of a year ago, when we had negative prices, brought home, how world oil today is really dominated by the big three, the United States, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. And as that was one time when the big three would come together, I think the United States would not be part of something like that today. But Russia, the relationship between Russia and Saudi Arabia is the basis of OPEC plus. I think there's also important to note kind of a new political map, and it got lost somewhat in the United States, I think, during the campaign, during the forest fires last August, I think it was. But it's the Israeli-UAE peace treaty. Many reasons for that: concern about Iran, concern about Turkey, concern about the role of the US in the Middle East in the future. But it is the most important political change in the map, really, since Anwar Sadat went to Jerusalem in 1977. I write about roadmap to the future, and that gets us into policy issues today. And some of you may say a week ago, Saturday, I had a summary of the section on what I call auto tech in the Wall Street Journal. But at that lunch I mentioned in 2003, J.B. Strawville, who was a technologist there, said, we had this harebrained idea that we could use what were then basically only laptop cells and power a car. In 2008, when the Tesla Roadster came out, it was a very interesting novelty. Look where we are today. What is it? Just 13 years later, how transportation is radically being reshaped. California says not sell gasoline cars after 2035. Britain says after 2030. General Motors says it's going to, has the aspiration not to produce gasoline cars after 2035. Volvo says 2030. And the Biden plan, the infrastructure plan, has $174 billion to promote electric cars, which in the infrastructure plan is 50% more than roads, bridges, highways, tunnels, ports, waterways, in an infrastructure plan. And by the way, Sheila, going back to your previous comment, of course, nothing in terms of pipelines. But what I mean by auto tech is you combine EVs with ride hailing, which will come back after the pandemic, and autonomous self-driving cars, where much progress has been made, but not quite there, and a lot of regulatory questions. And then you come up with auto tech. And this could be the biggest change in the business model of the world auto industry, with a lot of implications for the oil industry, with a lot of implications for the electric power industry. And it was brought home to me in a very pungent way when Volkswagen, which we have traditionally thought about as an automobile company, now describes itself as a software-driven mobility provider, different model of the automobile business. Finally, comes a subject that's obviously been on the table, and you were just talking about it with the FERC commissioner, which is climate map. And it seems to me there are really two modern eras of energy, before Paris and after Paris, and Paris being the 2015 climate conference. And we've seen in the 6 years since then how goals have become embedded in government policy, investors' decisions and strategies, and the strategies of companies. And all of this, and it's just gotten more and more intense. And obviously with the Biden administration, it's one of the 4 top priorities of the administration. And the phrase we hear everywhere, you can't go anywhere in the world where you don't run into it, is energy transition. So I would like, wearing a economic historian hat, to say that we're actually in the 312th year of the energy transition. It began in 1709, when an English metal worker figured out that you could produce iron more effectively using coal rather than wood. And since then, you've had a series of energy transitions, although there have also been energy additions. Oil overtook coal as the world's #1 energy source in the 1960s, but we use a lot more coal today than we did then. So that with energy addition. So a couple of things that are different here. One, this is driven more by governments than by markets or technologies, although they're all in the mix. Two, it's not energy addition, it really aims at energy change. And three, you're trying to shift in 29 years, move a global economy that's probably now $90 trillion, the US is over $20 trillion, to net zero in 29 years, change the foundations of both the US economy and the global economy that today depend upon fossil fuels for 80% of their energy. Pretty big job. Wind and solar, 50-year-old technologies, the last 10 years have become extremely competitive, of course, but we're going to need other technologies, carbon capture and hydrogen, which was not really seriously on the agenda 3 or 4 years ago, but is seriously on the agenda, most notably in Europe, where there's discussion that 25% of Europe's energy by 2050 could come from hydrogen. It also raises the question of what are the supply chains for net zero carbon? And a few comments on that. One, we move from, I just got an email from somebody in the media talking about big oil, very common phrase. So we'll move from big oil to an era of big shovels. That is, there'll be a lot more mining that's required. Secondly, we'll see that supply chains are not only about efficiency, economics, and technology, but also geopolitics. They'll be more political, and that's happening already. And thirdly, where energy transition collides with the geopolitical questions we have with China is on ESG and on net zero carbon, because of China's very significant role in what they call new energies. I sometimes think now that phrase energy security, which has been on the agenda for 40 or 50 years, we don't have to think about it because the US is energy independent. And so a major facility in Saudi Arabia gets attacked and the market shrugs it off, would not have happened. But we moved maybe from talking about energy security to now battery security. And we'll see, and I think right now we see how the question of the investment to cope with COVID, how does that and recovery from that overlay and compete with the investment in net zero carbon. I think one other really important point about energy transition, for the developing world, it's energy transitions, it's plural. The World Health Organization has said that there are 3 billion people who use waste and wood for indoor cooking, which the World Health Organization called the biggest environmental problem on the planet. You look at emerging market countries, developing countries, and they want more gas, they want more oil, they want commercial energy as part of their needs for development. And they don't have the same perspective that, let's say, the Netherlands has. Kind of to tie this all together, if you think about it, it's just striking all the surprises that have happened since 2000. There was 9/11, there was the financial crisis, COVID, you could go through them. Right now, you can add to that rapid digitalization, what we're doing today, and the questions about how work will change. And one of the things that I think many of you experience, what's the border between work and non-work? It used to be you kind of went home, but now home is where you work as well. But so, we ask what's going to be the next surprises, what's going to happen. But let me point to some of the big constants that I see ahead for the new map. One of which is the supply chains that have built up in the modern age of globalization will be under pressure. There'll be political pressure, there'll be discussions about reshoring, and then economics and resilience and security will compete with each other. Certainly a big constant will be climate and how to deal with it. A third is the term, we hear it a lot at USEA, but energy access, ensuring the energy that the modern society needs, whether in the United States or around the world. And the fourth is actually, from the book title, Clash of Nations. The number one foreign policy issue facing the Biden administration, and whatever administrations will follow it in the decades ahead, is the relationship with China. How does that play out? So far, we've seen some thought there might be a honeymoon period. It doesn't look like there's been a honeymoon period at all, except on climate issues. And I call it the Clash of Nations. The clamor of that clash is likely to grow somewhat louder in the years ahead. But I note the vibrancy and creativity and vitality of the United States when it comes to energy all across the energy spectrum. And that will continue to come to the fore as we come out of the COVID era and into a period of what looks to be high economic growth. And as always, we can be sure USEA will be right there at that forefront. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so very much, Dan, for your incredible contribution, your incredible brilliance, which we are privileged to share today with you. Very profound insights. And I know Vicki Bailey has some comments that she would like to make too. Vicki?
Thank you, Sheila. And Dan, thank you for such a profound perspective of events and how they shape relationships and actions, how they shape U.S. relationships and actions around the world. So thank you for that perspective, and congratulations on the new map. So don't want to miss an opportunity to say that. I would like to commend all of today's speakers for their thoughtful perspectives and timely remarks. It was truly inspiring to hear from so many energy leaders in one day. And it was also inspiring to hear from the recipients of the USEA Volunteer Awards. They represent the core of USEA mission. And I want to give a huge thank you and a round of applause to Zura and David and Bibu and Rich. I want to make sure that I remember those names, and thank you very much. I continue to be honored to be part of this complex energy enterprise that contributes so much to the quality of life and economic well-being of people around the world. Access to energy is the key, the economic key, quality of life key, health issues, all of that. So thank you to all of you for sharing your day with USEA. And I would like for Sheila to also make some remarks as well.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And of course, it's been a tremendous honor to work with you and over all these years in different capacities, and now to be with you. And without your leadership and ability to get us through some very complex and difficult, challenging times on a variety of fronts in the past nearly a year coming up, couldn't have made it without you. My personal motto is energy never sleeps. And of course, USEA can't sleep either. And the wonderful people who make up USEA, the outstanding staff and leaders in USEA, the board, and also the energy community that just keeps on creating, thinking, going to the heart of keeping the world fed and cooled or heated and safe and secure with all the complexities of the international scene. It is just, it's just such an essential element in life that we take it for granted many times. And being with USEA made me, over these many years, realize the core significance of energy and environment with it, because they go hand in hand in this whole mix. So it has been a tremendous privilege to have our outstanding speakers and the board members with us yesterday, and their contribution of time and effort in these difficult, calamitous, and demanding times, and one more moment on WebEx and Zoom and all that, and how much it means that they take time out of their incredible, incredibly heavy-duty calendars. And for the wonderful staff and the board, thank you too for being with us. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for being creative. And we go forward hand in hand with all those who participated and fulfilling our mission at USEA, which is, first of all, to inform and provide an open forum. There have been a lot of different views expressed today, very different perspectives, and also to go around the world to help the lives of the people around the world who don't have the benefits of the energy and other aspects of our society that are made apparent every day that we live in the United States. And looking forward to working with the new administration, and it was a great honor to have them participate in our program today. And Vicki, without your leadership and friendship, things may not have turned out so bright and shiny as they are. Thank you so much.